Greetings, ladies and germs. We are live from the great state of Florida, the new home base of the TJPOD. We're here in the new makeshift studio. We're doing really well. And today we've got a review of the newest Marvel Cinematic Universe film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I am very happy to be here. The move is complete, and I finally saw my first film here in Florida since my move, and what better one than one that was pretty anticipated by a lot of MCU fans, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Very interesting film, to say the least. Coming out of this, I wasn't really all that interested or excited in this film, to be honest, or the MCU as a whole. I've kind of made that clear since Avengers Endgame that I just really haven't been all that enthralled with, what the MCU's been doing. So, going into this, I didn't really have a whole lot of expectations or excitement. And leaving the film, I don't know. I thought it was kind of all right. Let's get into the non-spoiler thoughts here. And this is the non-spoiler review. So if you have not seen the film, stick around and hear what I got to say if you care. And if not, go check out the film. But these are non-spoiler thoughts. I kind of already let it off the bat. And I didn't love this film, if I'm being honest. I thought it was okay. There was good moments, but overall, kind of a lot of what I expected. There was some things I didn't expect, but overall, I kind of left the film a little bit lukewarm with it. If that makes sense. Given my last review of The Northman, I was very excited and really enjoyed that film. And its originality, but this one obviously is a franchise film. It has 20 plus films and now TV series that you have to watch to kind of get the context behind it. And that's kind of my thing at this point in the MCU is like, there's just so much baggage that comes with these films that it just feels like these filmmakers can't really be free. It feels like they're within the confines of the film they're trying to make, and with that, the baggage that comes with it. It feels like they're trapped within the confines of the baggage of the MCU. This film was written by Michael Waldron and directed by the great Sam Raimi. And that was my thing that really made me excited about this film. The one thing that really made me excited was Sam Raimi was directing this. And I'm a big Sam Raimi fan. I love a lot of his films, including the Spider-Man trilogy, the Evil Dead movies, the Quick and the Dead, I think it's what it's called. His Western he made, I think it's called, The Quick and the Dead, with Sharon Stone and Gene Hackman. I saw that on TV one day. I watched like half of it. I need to go back and actually watch the whole film, but I remember thinking that was really a cool Western. So throughout the years, man, Sam Raimi has just kind of really made some crazy films. He's great with horror. He's great with practical effects, and it was interesting to see a film like this be made because, a lot of people, when this was announced, a lot of people kind of felt like and knew that this was going to have like a horror spin on it, but with it being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like how much horror was this really going to have was kind of the question going into it. And there is some horror elements in this film without spoiling it, but it just felt to me like Sam Raimi's hands were tied in this film. It didn't feel like this was entirely the film he wanted to make. And it didn't entirely feel like a Sam Raimi film at times. And that's kind of my problem with the MCU as a whole, is that a lot of these films just kind of blend together. They don't feel like they're very different. Outside of like James Gunn's films, the Guardians of the Galaxy films, I would say those are probably like the most unique. And they're probably some of the better ones, especially that original Guardians of the Galaxy is still a really fun movie, and I really enjoyed it when I first saw it. And this film I wasn't really all that excited going in, like I said, and my expectations were kind of exactly where I kind of ended up when the film was over, to be honest. The MCU to me just doesn't really excite me at this point. Like, it feels like everything right now is just an afterthought. And on top of that, with it being called the Multiverse of Madness, they really try to dive deep and explain the multiverse. And I've never really been on board with the multiverse concept. I just think it's just too much, it's just a lot. And, it just, to me, feels like it's just a way for them to be able to shove in all the IP that Disney spent $74 billion buying, all of that Fox intellectual property, that being, all of the films that Fox made, they basically purchased the rights to, and now they have a big batch of characters that they have to essentially, reboot and bring into the MCU this late in the game, when to me it seems like it's already over, with Endgame, with the snap and all that stuff. Like, it just feels like this story's already been told, and everything that's kind of coming afterwards, I'm struggling to really care about. And a lot of these characters I'm struggling to really care about. Doctor Strange was one, though, that I really was excited and interested in, though, given the first film, which I really enjoyed a lot. The first Doctor Strange film, I thought it was really interesting. The visual effects were great, and I even thought the story was pretty okay. But this film, it just doesn't feel like a direct sequel to that, because there's just so much that's happened in the MCU since that Doctor Strange film. It just feels like, all those this film and that film don't really go together the same way that, like, the Thor films do, or the Captain America films do, or the Iron Man films do, where you could just watch all of those back to back to back and really have a whole story that plays out. This film just kind of doesn't feel anything like the first Doctor Strange film. I mean, outside of a lot of the same characters being involved, it doesn't really take any of them in any place in particular. It tries too much to build on the lore of the multiverse, and I'll get into that kind of when we talk about spoilers, but just sticking in the non-spoiler territory, a lot of the new characters that are introduced, I wasn't really that interested in this film, to be honest with you. There just wasn't really anything that in this movie that made me all that excited about the MCU. And for me, I just don't know how much legs the MCU is going to have going forward, honestly. I've been watching Moon Knight. I haven't really been all that impressed with that. Like I said, I watched WandaVision. I thought it was interesting up until about the 5th episode, and then after that, I was kind of out on that, and I'll explain, obviously, because Wanda is in this film. I'll explain kind of why I think that show is even more unnecessary than it was at the time it came out. That's all I'll say on that, but wasn't really that excited about WandaVision. Like I said, Falcon and Winter Soldier was just cringy and bland. Loki, I thought, was the worst of the bunch. I thought that show was terrible, and what was an exciting character with a great cliffhanger in Endgame for that character, they just literally kicked him in the balls for the entire series. Was not loving Loki either. I didn't even watch Hawkeye. I had no time and didn't really care to. So yeah, I've just kind of been out on the MCU shows, and even some of the films. I haven't even seen Eternals yet. I still have not seen that one. So yeah, I've just the point is, I've just been struggling to care, and at this point, because it just feels like everything is an afterthought to, the original series, the Infinity Wars, and it sucks also that they in Loki and even in this film in some ways kind of dump on the original films as if they don't really matter anymore. They take away the free will of these characters. In Loki, you find out that the time cops kind of take away the free will of people in these universes, and with that kind of it was annoying, because it's like, okay, well, everything that happened was just supposed to happen because the time cops said it was, and that kind of stuff was just really frustrating. The stuff that they've done with this new phase of the MCU, and with this film, it just didn't take it in any direction that really warrants me to want to jump up and see the next film. I mean, I'll definitely go see Thor 4 just because I really liked Ragnarok. I thought it was really funny and silly, even though, yeah, I don't think Ragnarok holds up as well as when I saw it in theaters. It is very silly and kind of dumps on the Thor character, but at least it was really entertaining and had some good humor, unlike this film, which the jokes in this film do not land whatsoever. I was not a fan of any of the humor in here at all. It just wasn't funny. It wasn't, so a lot of it just falls flat, in my opinion. And yeah, there was just a lot of like really cringy moments in this film too, but it wasn't all that bad. And to be honest, it could have been a lot worse. And I'm kind of dumping on the film, but it does have some good effects, some good sequences, some good action. I love a lot of the Doctor Strange powers and, kind of how that all works within, visually with the CGI and the way things kind of like break down and flip around and all that. If you see these movies, you know what I'm talking about. But like Doctor Strange's powers are really visually interesting to watch, and watching them kind of go through the multiverse and go into these different universes is visually stimulating. This is a very visually stimulating film, but it's not a very mentally stimulating film. I do think the story of this film works, but the character development doesn't really exist, and the characters that they introduce are not very interesting. And like I said, the characters that already existed, they don't really do a whole bunch with. So yeah, I didn't love this film, to be honest. I'm not really that excited about the MCU moving forward. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how many more years they're going to be able to do this. I mean, and that's the thing, like you can't just bank on cameos and fan service forever. People want something new at the end of the day, or they want something old but flipped on its head, but this film just, I just wasn't really that enthralled with what was going on, if I'm being honest. But again, I do think there is good here, but overall, I don't know, I wasn't all that excited or when I left the theater, I just was kind of like, all right, like, and I think with some of the series and things like that, I gave it kind of the benefit of the doubt just because I was like, okay, well, they're going to do something with this. They're going to do something with this. And it just doesn't seem like they are, outside of just like, oh, we need to introduce this character because we bought the rights. We need to introduce these characters because we bought the rights. We need to do this for this reason. We need to do this for this reason. And it just doesn't feel like anything is natural anymore in the MCU. Everything feels like it's contrived for some sort of purpose, whether it's for a message or because they spent billions of dollars on intellectual property that they have to introduce to get an ROI. It doesn't feel natural the way that the original MCU did. Those original films, where they were just trying to build these characters up and really give you a different feel with each film. Like, it just feels like now they're just trying to string it along because they have something going here. And it doesn't really feel like there's a whole lot of, originality. It doesn't feel like they even let these filmmakers really be filmmakers. It just feels like, they just stuck Sam Raimi in here and said, hey, we'll, do what you can, but do it within the confines of what we've created. And that's kind of my problem with the MCU at this point. It's just so dense to the point where it's like, and that they have to literally just, they have to keep it within the box that they've created. And and with that, with a director like Sam Raimi, it's hard because he thinks so far outside of the box that, like, I don't know. But that it just doesn't seem like he can really be creative. And that's probably one of my biggest complaints with the film is like I said earlier, it just feels like Sam Raimi's hands were tied with this. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I've got to say on the non-spoiler side. I didn't love this film. I thought it was okay. A little bit less than okay, to be honest with you. I thought it was pretty blah. I actually thought Shang-Chi was probably better than this. Even though I didn't review that, I probably think that movie is better than this. Obviously, Spider-Man. And like I said, that's why a lot of people, I think, went to go see this, just because Doctor Strange was in Spider-Man, and people are riding off the high of that. I mean, that kind of did help reinvigorate a lot of people in the MCU, because the MCU was really starting to lose steam after, WandaVision, Falcon, Winter Soldier, Loki, like those films. I mean, those shows and Eternals didn't do that well, and I didn't even see that one, but I heard it wasn't great. And then Shang-Chi, which did okay, and I thought the film was all right. I thought it was better than this. But I was really the most excited for Shang-Chi. I was like, this looks really fun, and it ended up being It ended up being all right. But this one, just wasn't really that into it, honestly. But yeah, that's all I got non-spoiler-wise. Let's get into the spoilers. So, spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. So, if you have not seen the film, your warning has been given. If you have seen the film, let's talk about it. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not going to go plot point by plot point here, because it is kind of a all over the place kind of film, and that's kind of my thing with it. It felt really messy in terms of, where it was going. I thought the plot and the story was actually probably the strongest part of this film, but the character development was a mess. I mean, let's talk about Wanda. I mean, WandaVision, really the whole nutshell of that was that she basically mind controlled an entire town full of people to create a fake fantasy in which she had children with Vision and they lived in a sitcom. That was essentially that show, and she faces no repercussions for that. And this was one of my complaints. I think I mentioned this in my review of WandaVision last year, that there's no real consequences for any of it. Gets applauded, and they say, "Oh, you did what you could. You sacrificed a lot, Wanda." Like all of that, and she doesn't really learn from that situation. And so when you go into this film, I don't remember the dialogue either. I was just paraphrasing, but I remember there was like a moment where like Wanda's like freeing all of the people that she enslaved and literally mind controlled. And they're like, she's like, they don't understand what you've done for them. And it's like, what has she done for them? But you get that muddy, moral ambiguity going on in WandaVision that didn't make any sense. And you plop it into this film and make it even less interesting. I mean, we basically see the arc from WandaVision done in this film, only she's a straight on villain, and it's a lot less interesting this time around, because there's no like hidden, thing that you're trying to figure out. Like the whole time WandaVision just trying to figure out like where's this going. But in this film, you know exactly where it's going because you've seen WandaVision. She literally has the same arc, only it's like she's just a full-on villain. And I was somebody that said I wanted Wanda to be a villain. I said that when I reviewed WandaVision. And I still do like that idea, but my problem with it is that in this film, her entire motivation for being this villain is the exact same motivation that she supposedly learned from in WandaVision. So it's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's just the same arc that we already saw done again, and it's much less interesting. And this time she's the main antagonist. But I will say this much, at least Wanda does some damage. At least she's a formidable villain, which is something that a lot of MCU films don't have. Is a formidable villain that really looks like they can, do some damage. I mean, Wanda destroys all those wizards at the temple early in the film. She kills the Illuminati and murders every single one of them, which I thought was pretty awesome. That was probably my favorite moment in the whole film. We'll talk about the Illuminati, but that's one thing I will say that Sam Raimi was able to do in this film was you really see deaths in this film. And that's one of my favorite things about this film is that the action is great and you really see death. Like you really see people dying. You really see real violence. I mean, there's what's her name? Captain Britain or whatever. Captain England, Peggy Carter. She gets sliced in half. What's her name? Lashana Lynch from the 007 film. She plays, Captain Marvel from the other multiverse. See, like, this stuff is just so, like, silly and confusing, but yeah, she plays like multiverse Captain Marvel, and she gets smashed by a statue. You get John Krasinski as Reed Richards, which was an interesting cameo, and he's going to be playing him in the new Fantastic Four reboot that they do. Hashtag stop live action remakes and reboots. That one's coming, even though I saw Fantastic in the theater, and that was one of the worst films I've ever seen in the theaters. And the other Fantastic Four films that came out in the 2000s were also pretty trash, so not really all that excited for that one. I think it's just going to be another flop. Maybe it'll be more interesting with the MCU, but probably not, if I'm being honest. But you get him, and he gets ripped to shreds, which was pretty cool to see the effects of that. And then obviously the dude with the whisper or whatever, he like explodes himself from internally because his mouth gets shut by Wanda. So I mean, that scene was awesome. And then obviously you get Charles Xavier here too, which, I mean, really, like, I was like, seeing Patrick Stewart back in this role, I guess, was interesting, but it's just like in the MCU, I mean, is kind of interesting, I guess, but I don't know. It just seemed kind of like fan servicey, and it didn't really do a whole lot for me. I mean, I felt like that character got the perfect closure in Logan, which I adore that film, by the way. And in this film, it just kind of felt like a shoehorned in cameo just for fan service, and like that's where Marvel's gonna go, really. I think at this point, it's just how much fan service can we do to keep people interested. But like, that's the thing, you can't just keep people interested with fan service. You have to have more than that. You have to bring more to the table. And so, yeah, I guess we're talking about the Illuminati now, but yeah, sure. I mean, it didn't do a whole lot for me, man. I was just like, not even a lot of people cheered in the theater, which, by the way, my theater was probably about 70% full. And I think a lot of those people were just coming because of, like, I think I mentioned this earlier, but, a lot of people are just riding off the high of Spider-Man. A lot of people loved that film. I thought it was pretty good. I reviewed it. Thought it was really good. So I think a lot of people just wanted to see where it went next, and especially with Doctor Strange being in that Spider-Man film and then now being in this, people wanted to see where this goes. But I can't imagine a lot of people being that excited, 2 or 3 years down the road. But that's a different discussion. I'm sidetracking a little bit here, but the point is that, the Illuminati and all that, it just felt very much like a fan service cameo, and that's really where I feel like the MCU is leaning more so than, telling unique stories at this point, because this, although I thought the story was okay, a lot of the character work was non-existent. I mean, what did we really learn about Doctor Strange in this film that we didn't already know? I mean, nothing. Like, the question is, are you happy? Like, that's basically the theme of this film. Like, are you happy with your life, or do you want to go to some other reality that you don't belong in to? I mean, that is essentially the message that this film is trying to say. And I just was like, all right, like, so, I mean, I just was really not impressed, not all that excited with what I was seeing here. Let's talk about, but yeah, with Wanda just kind of wrapping her character up. I mean, I just wish she had another motivation, her character, outside of just like, I want to see my children and I'm going to go invade some other, universe to do that. You know what I mean? It just was like, we're really doing this, like, we're really just like, what was the point of WandaVision? Like, these shows are supposed to flesh out these characters, not just be a trial run for an arc that we're going to see repeated in the films. You know what I mean? So, yeah, really wasn't all that into what they were doing here with a lot of these characters, especially with Wanda, though, because I was really excited to see what they did with Wanda, making her a villain. You know, they really kind of built her up through the films as this troubled character with a dark past, trying to get over it. And it seemed like she was kind of turning the corner in WandaVision, and even if she was kind of getting involved in the dark magic aspect of it, I think that she could have taken that and ran with it instead of just going back to the same idea of, I need to be with these children that don't really exist, but are just a manifestation of my own aspirations. But I need to be a part of their lives or whatever. So yeah, I wasn't really that excited. And like I said, I really wanted Wanda to be a villain. That wasn't the problem I had with it. The problem I had with it was that it just didn't make any sense. For her to just have the same arc that she had, like in WandaVision. It makes WandaVision a useless show, like I was mentioning earlier in the non-spoiler section when I said, that this kind of negates the purpose of even watching WandaVision. And it does, because, you get a lot of that already in this film, even though it's pretty half-baked compared to what WandaVision was able to do. But we already saw 7 hours of this arc. That's my point. We already saw 7 hours of this arc, and it seemed like she got over it, and now we're seeing it again. That was my problem with it. I'm just like, we're really doing this again? What was the point of WandaVision? I feel like I wasted my time watching that now. But yeah, whatever. And like I said with Doctor Strange, like, what do we really learn about Strange? I mean, he learns how to use black magic to reanimate a corpse, which I actually thought was a pretty good twist in the story. I thought that was pretty funny and a great plant early in the film. When he reanimates the corpse at the end of the film. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but, this is kind of how I do this now. I don't want to go plot point by plot point. It's just kind of like, but yeah. But, I wasn't really all that impressed with what we were doing here with Wanda and Strange. I mean, the plot, and the story is kind of a cat and mouse game for a lot of it, and it all surrounds this walking human MacGuffin in America Chavez, who is the new character that is presented here. And I wasn't really that excited for this character by the end of it. I just don't think she had enough personality and enough really to do outside of being a damsel in distress and but she does have an interesting arc, I guess, of, finding out how to use her powers or whatever. But we've seen this done in the MCU much better. And in other films. We've seen that kind of arc done much better from a protagonist character than, America Chavez, who's basically a walking MacGuffin for most of the film. And the thing is, I just didn't really find myself empathizing with this character or really that interested in the little bit of backstory that we got from her. I mean, what do we really know about this character outside of the fact that she has 2 moms and she has a power to jump through dimensions and multiverses? That's it. And she wears a denim jacket, and that's it. I mean, it was like she was very bland, and she's very much like the kid characters that we've seen in other films like Iron Man 3 and all that, only those characters barely had the screen time that she had, and the Iron Man 3 character in particular was the weakest part of that film. So it's like, I wasn't really that excited for America Chavez either. It wasn't really, I mean, I had heard that America Chavez was going to be in this film, and that's a character from the comic books that I haven't read. So, I mean, that's cool, but, she doesn't really do much here. It doesn't really have much, density to her or anything that really makes me care or empathize with what she's going through. So, but, the film does really try to, do some things, with the plot, and that I actually appreciated, the idea of, Strange reanimating the corpse. I thought that was kind of a funny, it was probably the funniest aspect of this film, honestly, and it kind of worked in my opinion. I think it was definitely the best plot point in this film, and I like the chemistry between Wong and Strange as well. I mean, that's Wong is awesome. He's a really fun character. Excuse me. I like Wong. He's cool. But I mean, I really don't have all that much to say about this film, to be honest. I was just kind of like, all right, here we go again. Another Marvel film, throw it in the bucket. So, I mean, yeah, it didn't blow me away. That's my point. Not the way that Spider-Man did, because Spider-Man had the emotion. And the cameos that are done in there really had more to do with the story. The other two Spider-Men coming into the picture through the multiverse and all that. Like that felt a lot more earned, I think, than this. This film just felt like it was all over the place. And although there is a story here, you don't really feel anything because none of these characters are really that interesting. I mean, like I mentioned, Strange. I mean, he really doesn't have any complexity to him outside of the fact that he realizes he loves Rachel McAdams' character, which we already kind of knew from the first film. Like they kind of try to rebuild that relationship up, and it just seems like it's just not that interesting to me. I'm sorry. And I mean, maybe people will really like this film. I don't know. But for me, it's pretty forgettable amongst the bunch of MCU films. And when it comes to going back and rewatching this, I probably won't. I don't know if I will. Not like Spider-Man and No Way Home. And, that's probably the only one from the post-Endgame era that I'll probably go back and rewatch. The rest of these, I'm just like, all right, see it once and probably never see it again. I mean, I'm just not that excited about the MCU as I was even like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm just kind of burnt out from these movies, if I'm being honest. It's just a lot of the same old. It's just, but I do appreciate a lot of the effects here. And like I said, Sam Raimi being able to have a little bit more balls with this film, I really liked in terms of, characters getting killed and some gruesome violence. I mean, I forgot to mention, the other Doctor Strange, falls out the window and gets impaled through a gate, which was kind of cool to see in an MCU film. So there is some good violence in here for an MCU film. There is some good practical effects with the zombie, the reanimated corpse scene for Doctor Strange when he basically dream walks through the, I think it's what they call it, dream walking or whatever, where he basically reanimates the corpse. There's some good effects there. There's actually a good scare in this film when Wanda and Wong are going into the temple where the dark energy is, and those monsters are in there, and she lights up one of the lamps and the monster appears. That was a good little scare. That one got me pretty good. But yeah, like I said, I just wish there was more of that. There's little drops of Sam Raimi in this film, but it just enough to make you realize it's a Sam Raimi film. But man, it could have used a little bit more of his creativity, because it just feels so run of the mill, especially by the end of this film. The third act just feels so bleh. MCU blah. MCU gobbledygook. But let's talk about the lore here. I talked about that a little bit and how, the lore of this film just for me did not work in terms of, what they were trying to do. And my thing with lore is keep it simple, but make the concepts within it really dense. Let's take, for example, some of the best lore we've ever seen in films. Star Wars, the Force, the idea of the Force, being this all-penetrating power that surrounds and creates everything and all living things and throughout the universe. The idea of the Force is not hard to wrap your head around, but when you really think about it, it's very dense. The idea of this all-powerful energy that can be manipulated and used by people who are spiritually sound. That idea is really dense if you really think about it. But at face value, it's very simple. And that my problem with the lore in this film is that it it's so complicated at face value, but then when you actually understand it, it's pretty surface level. Like the names for things are so like the book, all these different books that all have, different names and different energies attached to them. It's just, and all these runes and all this stuff. I'm just like, what the, like, it's all like just so like hard to follow. But then like when you really do start to understand it, it's just like, oh, this stuff is good and this stuff, is bad, But it's just like, it doesn't need to be that complicated at face value. It's not like the Force and like a lot of the lore in Star Wars, the planets and all that, where it's just easy to understand at face value. But then when you look deeper into it, it's a lot more complex. This, it's like, it tries to be super complex, but it's really just face value, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm really explaining that right, but it makes sense to me. But my point is that and maybe this is because this is all in the comic books and that's just how it's explained there, where you can actually, explain it in text and several hundreds of issues of stuff to really flesh things out. But when it comes to a 2-hour film, you've really got to kind of be presentable with this information, especially in a film like this, a genre film, where you don't have the the luxury of real history, like with the Northman. When you look at that film, and I know I just talked about it, but a lot of the religion and things that are brought up there, I mean, that's real stuff that people believed. Whether or not the stuff that actually happens to those people is real or not is irrelevant, because that stuff is real. So you have to kind of go by that code. But with this, it's like you could take a little bit more liberties with it. And I know that, the stuff's all based off the comic books and what was written there, but it's just like, I don't know, maybe making it just a little bit more presentable is all I'm saying. I don't know. Maybe all the comic book truthers out there will come at me for saying that, and say, hey, well, you just don't get it because you didn't read the comics. And yeah, you're right. I guess that's it. But I shouldn't have to read the comics to understand the films. How many times do I have to say that? Like, that's the thing. I shouldn't have to go read 100 issues of Doctor Strange to understand what happens in the Doctor Strange films. That's my point. But yeah, like I said, the score is really good, though. Going back to just the technical aspects of this film, the score is really good. I really like the music in this film a lot. Some of the themes are really solid. But yeah, outside of that, man, I wasn't really all that interested in what this film had to offer. I to be honest, I wouldn't even say I was disappointed, though, because I wasn't really looking forward to this film all that much. I mean, I was just like interested to see where it went, and I love Sam Raimi, so I was going to give it a chance. And I don't even blame him for this film. I just, at this point, like, his name was just there to be slapped on this film. It didn't really seem like he was in full control here. I mean, he definitely had some insight on stuff, but for sure, especially with like the effects side of it and some of the scenes. In particular, there's a scene where Rachel McAdams, Doctor Strange, and America Chavez are running from Wanda, and they're running through the tunnel to get to the book that Doctor Strange is supposed to read, I guess, to help them figure out how to win. And they're running through this tunnel, and like Wanda's like breaking down the doors, and Strange is having to like lock all the doors. And there's a great moment of tension in there that definitely felt like Sam Raimi's hands were all over it. Where there's like, they're standing by the door, and it keeps cutting to all their faces, and then like it cuts to the door, and you hear the water dripping, and it's like all silent. And I was like, oh yeah, this is really good tension. So there is some really good pockets and really good moments in this film, good horror moments. But overall, it's not really a horror film the way I was hoping it would be. And I guess that's another really big complaint of mine, is that I was hoping this would be much more of a full-on horror film. Like, I wish they really would have went for it. I mean, it has a PG-13 rating, and we've seen PG-13 horror be really good. So I really wish this film would have taken more punches in that regard. I mean, there definitely, like I said, there definitely is some good, violence, and people actually die in this film, unlike in a lot of MCU films. So I will give it credit for that. But yeah, again, I wasn't really all that into what we were doing here with this. So, yeah. But I guess I'll just give my final thoughts because I really just I don't have all that much to say, man. But here are my final thoughts. The character development here was really bad. Some of the worst we've seen in the MCU, if I'm being honest, or lack thereof character development. So that was frustrating. From all these characters, the new character like America Chavez, who was about as blank slate as you could possibly be, to Wanda, who they just replayed her arc from WandaVision but made her a full-on villain, which I wanted her to be a villain, but I wanted her to maybe have another motivation outside of seeing her fake kids that aren't really even hers. And then Strange, he has absolutely no character development in this film. What does he learn? He gains a third eye, and that's it. He gets a third eyeball, and that's it. So, I mean, I was pretty disappointed with that. And Wong hangs on the side of the cliff for the whole second and third, almost second into the third act. I mean, the entire second act, he's hanging off a cliff. So, I mean, and we don't really learn all that much about Wong. So, we don't learn anything new. What do these characters learn? What do they gain? Outside of America Chavez, she has like an okay arc. She probably has the best arc in this film. And that's not saying a whole lot. It's an arc we've seen a bazillion times done much better than it was here. So, wasn't really that all excited with this, honestly. But I do think there's the score was really good. The visual effects are really beautiful and great. And, especially when they're traveling through the multiverse, like the scene where America Chavez and Doctor Strange are jumping through the different multiverses and they're going through them. Like, I thought that was really cool. I mean, I know we've seen that in shows like Family Guy and stuff like that before, but I don't know. I thought it was really cool just in that moment, the way it was shot and the visuals there. But yeah, the visuals are really good in this film. It's a pretty film. It's got the big MCU budget, so that helps. There is some good moments of tension. Wish there was more. I wish this film really dove deep and really went for it in a lot of these scenes when it came to the horror and the tension that I was trying to build. But yeah, just pretty run of the mill. And honestly, I'm probably gonna forget about this film and T-minus, as soon as Thor 4 comes out, I'm just gonna really not care about this one all that much. But yeah, I wouldn't even say I was disappointed, but yeah, that's all I've got, man. Just kind of a blah MCU film, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to keep going and seeing these. I really want to start reviewing some different films outside of Marvel films, because it's just like, I don't know, I'm just not really that into Marvel anymore. I've seen a lot of these films already, and frankly, they're not getting any better as they go. I mean, Endgame and Infinity Wars was really the peak. That's my favorite MCU film. I thought that film was brilliant. And everything since then, it's just kind of been downhill. So, will they come up with something new? Hopefully. If not, then I don't know. I don't see that long of a shelf life for the MCU, if that's the case, but we'll have to see. But as for my rating, I'm going to give this film, I'm going to give this film a 2.6 out of 5. Didn't love it. Sorry. Did not love this. Just, not great. And I even gave like WandaVision like a 3 out of 5. Gave that the benefit of the doubt just because I liked the first like 3 or 4 episodes. And I even think I gave Falcon and Winter Soldier a better rating than this, which I probably wouldn't had I rated those today. Like I said, I was kind of giving those 2 series the benefit of the doubt just because I felt like Marvel was trying to get their footing. But come on, it's been a year, and these shows are getting worse and worse. Even though Moon Knight is, all right. I think it's better than Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision, and definitely better than Loki. But I don't even love that show all that much. I think it's kind of blah. But yeah, as for this film, not loving this. I think Shang-Chi was better than this. I haven't seen Eternal, so I don't have an opinion on that. Spider-Man was much better than this, had much more emotional weight, much more character development than this did. even for like the side characters like MJ and some of those characters had more development than even Doctor Strange had. Doctor Strange in that film had more development than he has in this film, his own film. So, yeah, I mean, just, yeah, not all that impressed here, man. Not all that impressed with this. So, yeah, 2.6 out of 5. That's the best I can do. And I thought maybe a 3. But I was like, I don't even think I just was like, this film was so blah. And I don't think it's like the worst film ever. It's just blah. It's just so forgettable, so run-of-the-mill in so many ways. No emotional weight, no complexity. And yeah, just kind of a disappointment. But yeah. Now you've heard my review. Now it's time to hear what y'all think. It is time for reviewing the reviews. We're here. Let's do this thing. Reviewing the reviews. Starting out with a 1-star. This is from Juan ORL. Juan ORL. I don't know how to say that. Who cares? Too much, yet too little. Raimi's directing clashes with Marvel's vision to the point where it tries to do too much but ends up doing nothing. Elizabeth Olsen's performance is great, but other than that, the dialogue feels forced all the time. America Chavez is a character. He spelled character wrong, but is a character is impossible to like, care, empathize with. Yeah, I agree with this. Not really that exciting. I did think Elizabeth Olsen was all right. She kind of overacts at moments, but whatever. The plot tries too hard not to be predictable to the point where it leads right where you thought it was going to go. The few minutes of expected MCU fan service are absolutely redundant to the plot, as it helps establish how powerful Wanda is, which is already shown beforehand. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it is pretty redundant. It does have some impressive visuals, and the music is brilliant, but the overall one of the worst experiences I've had in a theater in a while. To be fair, the expectations was very high. Yeah, and I get what he's saying here about the fan service, cameos. We saw Captain Britain, or whatever her name is, the Peggy Carter as Captain America or Captain Britain. Like, we saw her in that What If series, which I watched literally that episode, and I was like, I didn't even like the animation style. So I'm like, I watched I think the first 2 or 3 episodes of that, and I was like, I'm good on this. I didn't like the animation style for any of the episodes. I'm like, this just looks ugly, and I'm not going to watch a show that looks ugly. But yeah, I kind of agree with this, though. Except for this, I don't think it was one of the worst experiences I've had. I did have a couple of high schoolers sitting next to me that were just laughing at so many moments throughout the film that I thought was really funny. Their commentary was kind of funny, especially for a lot of the cringe humor and moments. 2 stars. Let's do it. It's from Bobby Aitken. That this movie was made is the real horror. If I had to describe this film in one word, it would be garbage. Oops. Hang on. Get this in frame. There we go. If I had to describe this film in one word, it would be garbage. It is messy, takes incredible Marvel characters and forever destroys them, and totally squanders the vast multiverse of opportunities available. It seems my hopes for a good capture of the multiverse after Loki were smashed against the rocks. And that is the real horror in this movie. It seems that DC has finally found the one place they can beat Marvel hands down, and that is their handling of the multiverse and the awesome possibilities it brings. My only highlight was the extended cameo scene. At least Eternals is no longer the worst Marvel film. Yeah, the cameo scene was pretty exciting. Just to watch those characters fight and get rocked was pretty awesome. And I don't really agree with this either. I think DC's multiverse is a mess too, so not really. I don't like any of these multiverse ideas. They're just like that's how you know we're hitting the end point of these superhero films is when you start seeing the multiverse come in. I'm like, ugh. 3 stars. Here we go. Dr. Boring. This one's from Jonathan Showreels. Dr. Boring and the multi-mess of inconsistencies. God damn it. I'm quite positive in general about MCU movies. I think they are entertaining and have good production, which don't make look cheap. I think he was trying to say what don't make them look cheap. But this was unfortunately not entertaining at all and felt really cheap, messy, and inconsistent. I don't think it felt cheap. I mean, it looked expensive, but the messy and inconsistent I can buy into more. The movie feel way too long for what it has to narrate. And the CGI, good lord, was really disturbing at some points. Sometimes you see the style of Raimi, but it never really feel consistent with what you see. Yep, this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, how it felt like Sam Raimi's hands were tied making this. Like it did, you feel little drips and little pockets of Sam Raimi, and those are some of the best moments of this film, but they come few and far between, and the rest of the time it just feels like a run-of-the-mill MCU film instead of something more unique, which is what I was hoping it would be, was more of a horror film. I mean, you get like horror moments, but it's really just your basic MCU film. Let's go to 4 stars. Let's find a good one here. Here we go. This is from Jacqueline Sandra 34671. I can't believe I'm right. It's titled Disappointing. I can't believe I am writing a bad Marvel review, but I can't lie. This movie was really disappointing. A couple of surprises, but when I was expecting way more after watching No Way Home. Didn't mind the horror side of the story. It actually made me laugh. As for the music, I'm a huge fan of Danny Elfman, but the music was bad. Really, I thought the music was pretty good. I won't watch this one again. Marvel, we are used to greatness. Please don't do that again. Fair enough. Five stars. Here we go. This is from Dragons and Owls. Multiverse of Madness. I like that. It was mid. Not much else to say. It wasn't awful, and is pretty on par with the first Doctor Strange film. Here's to hoping that Thor Love and Thunder is better. Maybe. Wasn't really that excited about that trailer, to be honest with you. I can't help but feel that most Phase 4 Marvel films, this one in particular, relies on the audience watching past content, of which isn't just the previous films, but Series 2, in which a way feels unfair and takes what was so great about many of the past Marvel films, that being that anyone could go in blind. This idea also contributing to Marvel's success. Was it a disappointment? Yeah. No, I actually like this point he makes here about, basically you have to rely on seeing the other films and other shows now in order to understand what's going on, and how this film does not stand on its own whatsoever. I totally agree with that point. It does not. And that's my problem with a lot of these modern MCU films. They don't stand alone as good standalone films. I mean, the only one that really I was fine with not was Infinity Wars, and that's because it wasn't supposed to stand alone, but some of these are supposed to, I feel like. I shouldn't have to watch all of the shows to understand what's happening here. And even if you watch Infinity Wars without seeing the other ones, I mean, yeah, you may be a little bit confused and disconnected in some moments, but you'll at least get the idea. This is just kind of, if you didn't watch WandaVision or, some of the other films, you would have no idea what's going on. So, I mean, I get what this guy's saying. Yeah, but I agree. It was pretty mid. The multiverse of midness. I like that. Here we go. 6 stars. This is a 6-star. I know you can't see it, but here, let me see if I can get it in the frame. Sorry, my ear's itching. Six stars. That's from Daniel Gramos. Don't waste your precious time. Disappointed. The start of the movie is really slow, but then all of a sudden everyone decides to run faster than Sonic. In the first half of the movie, there will be a lot of plot holes. A lot. We are introduced to a character that fills all the requirements to be an interesting and important piece of the story. Power comes from believing, quote unquote, lesbian parents, mixed race. This was not a Doctor Strange movie. They tried to force a little bit of horror, which was somewhat mediocre. You don't need to watch a lot of horror movies to know that jump scares don't make a character scary. Yeah, there is a couple cheap jump scares, but I actually thought the one that we got was pretty good. They added a little more gore, which was cool in my opinion. Disappointed. I don't recommend it. Yeah, I thought, like I said, the gore and the violence was definitely pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, but basically a lot of people are just saying that, kind of through the halfway point. Even I missed it when I went to 6 stars, but people are mostly saying that, it's mid-tier, not that exciting, predictable. Yeah. Seven stars. This is from Naru Korn. I think is how you say that. Raimi's directing skills carry the movie. Without him, this would be even worse. Actually, I expected many things in the movie before it was released, plus all the spots and trailers that hyped me so much. This movie has every Raimi's style, such as great camera angles, editing, and color grading. Also, the terrifying tone from every Raimi movie. Besides the great things in this movie, it carries a bunch of weird dialogues and screenplay. There are lots of plot holes in this movie. In this movie, there are so many elements that can be used in further movies, but they just throw it in some bad ways I'll never understand. So as an MCU fan, this just makes me disappointed so much. As I say, without Raimi directing style, this would be even worse than it is. Yeah, some of the dialogue was pretty bad in this film, I will say. Some of the writing I was not really that excited about. And like I said, this whole idea of the MCU multiverse is just not, I'm not liking it at all. Haven't really liked it from the beginning. 8 stars. Here we go. We're going to start seeing people really like this film. This is from Mr. Lucas War Hero. 8 stars. Sam Raimi doing what he does best. While this film has a more grim tone than its predecessors, it's still a Marvel film at heart. Of course, it would take Sam Raimi to find the perfect blend of comic book movie, horror, fantasy, and slapstick. He might be working with a massive budget now, but the man stays true to his roots, sticking with what he knows pays off. I mean, he's worked with massive budgets before, though, but I get what he's saying. And I agree. Raimi, the moments that you can tell Raimi had his hands on, like I said, are the best parts of this film. And maybe I should have made that a little bit more clear, but I did mention that a lot. The pacing may seem disjointed or fragmented at times, but I feel that only reflects the complex nature of the multiverse within the film. I don't think this is necessarily a good thing, though. Maybe it's not like other groundbreaking MCU films, but ultimately this is an entertaining feature. Fair enough. Getting towards the end here, 9 stars. All right. This is from King Zekno. 9 stars. Straight up madness. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a fun, messy MCU film which follows the adventures of Doctor Strange and Wanda trying to save the multiverse from a threat. Now, I can't say much about this movie, but I can say it's an amazing film with beautiful shots and visuals and is extremely well directed. Thanks, Sam Raimi. Though the writing is a bit sloppy and messy at times in the movie, most of the dialogue is pretty good. I thought it was pretty weak, to be honest with you. And I do agree it's pretty sloppy and messy at times. I don't blame Raimi, though. I blame more of Michael Waldron, and I blame more of Kevin Feige and the MCU. Some parts are because I feel like a lot of these movies are being made by committee, which is pretty much my biggest complaint with a lot of modern MCU films. Anyway, some parts are very messy, and I feel like they cut this movie way too short. I still very much enjoyed it, but the thing that stood out to me is Sam Raimi. He uses horror elements from such movies as Evil Dead. It's the first horror movie in the MCU, which is amazing. It's also the most gruesome entry in the MCU. So don't think of bringing your kids there. Keep your expectations in check, or else you will enjoy it less. Please don't get spoiled on the internet, because the surprises and cameos are truly mind-blowing. I mean, sure. With the flaws that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness carries, it still stands out to be one of the MCU's best entries yet. Yeah, I disagree. I think it's one of their weakest, in my opinion. This is my 5th favorite Marvel movie. Well, good for this guy. I give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, well, that's your opinion. Great. Glad you enjoyed it. 10 out of 10. Who gave this a perfect score? Let's get like a kind of hefty review here. Here we go. This one should be good. This is from Milkrube 389-359-735. 10 out of 10. I could be convinced this is a bot, maybe. I'm just kidding. Oops. Spectacular. A feast for the eyes. Hollywood magic. This flick is pure CGI entertainment, Hollywood magic, and a feast for the eyes blended with Sam Raimi's signature horror style visuality. Is that a word? That makes this one-of-a-kind MCU show unique and satisfying. Ugh. I apologize for the yawns. As you can tell, I'm getting home from this late at night. Doctor Strange is amazing. And Scarlet Witch is scary and unstoppable. They're great antagonist-protagonist chemistry that really captures your wild imagination of their universes. For those who expect too much about cameos and other MCU characters in the flick, you might get disappointed on the show. Some scenes might have surprises, though, but not enough to satisfy you or into that level of expectations. What does he mean here? I guess he's saying, like, this won't meet your expectations. I don't know. This one didn't really make a lot of sense. I'll do one more. Here we go. Better. This one's short. Thomas L. Hiscox. Better than Endgame. Yeah, I said it. I'm here for Scarlet Witch supremacy. Easily the greatest character in the current roster of MCU. Looking forward to seeing the multiverse expand, and hopefully we get our MCU mutants in Fantastic Four. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I got to say, folks. I mean, you've heard what I had to say. I didn't love this film. Thought it was kind of blah. And I think that's pretty much the consensus from these reviews as well. Just kind of a really messy film. Didn't love it. I didn't hate it either. I thought it was probably middle of the road, maybe one of the weaker MCU films. But that doesn't say... I mean, MCU really hasn't had that many really bad films. I mean, I would probably put this one, though, probably in the bottom 5 if I had to rank them. And I probably will one day do a ranking of all of these films. Yeah. Not great. Not horrible, but that's all I got. And thanks for watching, everybody. And much more to come from the new space. And I'll probably do a whole thing talking about what I'm going to do and all that. I don't know. But thanks for watching. I appreciate all the love, all the support. I'm really starting to get some traction and the views. And I'm going to start putting up some more stuff. So be on the lookout for that. and I'll see ya on the flip